first conference. I think it's only appropriate that Vivian should go first.
Wow, thank you so much. So I think in terms of retooling, schooling and education, there might be sort of like an idea that actually learning takes place in schooling. Before addressing that, I actually like to really take a perspective backwards to number one, talk about youth. What's our definition of youth, right? So probably our definition of youth will be somebody from the ages of 0 up until maybe the ages of 20-something or 30-something. But if we understand with the advancement of technology, we stand a very good chance that we will be heading for 100 years old life. Now, if we think about 100 years old life, then the definition of youth, even by the World Health Organization, is going to change dramatically. And I am just as young as everybody here because youth will be defined up until the ages of 65, roundabout there. Under the age of 17 is actually what we call now underage. So I think there's a first perspective that I think we need to throw in when we talk about learning and schooling. Because number one, is not a defined phase. If you are going to live 100 years old, you're not just going to spend maybe your first 15 years to study and then think that you are done with it for the rest of your life. I think learning will seriously take on a new definition when we talk about continuous improvement and continuous learning. And it's almost like an upgrade that we need to go for ourselves every now and then, 1.0, 2.0, X.0, and whatever. So I think I'll start with that first, and then we will continue our conversation.
I think it's a very good way to start to say that this de-link schooling and learning. She has even defined, I'm very happy with her definition of youth because I'm almost halfway there where your age comes out. So, and the fact that we are going to need to learn many things and for a long period of time, I think gives us a big playing field. Yeah. Mukulji, how would you add to what Vivian has said?
Yes.
Or subtract, as you like.
No, adding would be more proper. And I will add with my definition of youth. My definition of youth is very simple. Who talks in future tense is youth. Who talks in past tense is old. That's simple. Yeah. So who talks about planning, who talks about future, who talks about plans to do something, bubbling with energy, that's youth for me. So I've seen 80-year young people planning for, and there were one Satolekar in Maharashtra who wrote extensively on Dharma Shastra. When somebody from Maharashtra went and met him at the age of 104, he was planning for his next series of books at 104. So he is a young man at 104. And as to learning and schooling, I think we had a very good opening batswoman. She started with delinking learning and schooling, and that's exactly what we had exchanged in our emails also. Interestingly, what we are working, what the organization that I represent is working on something which has been here in this country for thousands of ages. We are trying to retool the Gurukula education system, the oldest in the whole world. And we have started new Gurukuls today, which are working and functioning with a totally modern outlook and a synthesis of both. But more on the methodology part, we look at the ancient methodologies, which have been giving us a great inspiration to go ahead. Because more importantly, whatever you add on through the digital tools and other tools, the basic tools of knowledge that we have are our senses. 5 senses of knowledge and 5 senses of action. Those have to be empowered in the schooling part in the learning part of the learning curve, right from the womb it starts. And unless you have those senses geared up to gain knowledge, any other tools won't help. So that is the kind of 360-degree approach towards learning. Not only just looking at learning from the information point of view, not just memorizing information and then evaluating that memory part. That is what we have today in the name of schooling. Not just that, but looking at the 360-degree education, which includes arts, which includes sports, no doubt. Without that, you cannot work with the senses, which includes self-sufficiency on the part of every student. He should be, if I am wearing clothes, I should be able to knit them. Not only just, I should be able to weave them. Our Gurukula student can just extract yarn from the cotton and till knitting their own clothes. They can do that. So they feel so self-sufficient. And they have that ancient knowledge of language, which is one of the most scientific languages, Sanskrit. Right from that up to the most modern, they can use computers, they can talk about physics, chemistry, atomic physics. At the age of 14, they know more about that than the normal schooling. So we are working to put that technology, that methodology of learning, that methodology of gaining knowledge, complete 360-degree knowledge, to the modern day schooling, how it can be applied to modern day schooling. So we work with the educational institutes. We are evolving modern Gurukulas. At the same time, we work with the modern schools and colleges and try to equip and empower the teachers to use those methodologies in today's context.
So our let's say the landscape is expanding. I really like your definition that those who are looking forward are young and those who are looking backward are old. I have a memory, my grandmother, who was in her late 90s, used to live with me. And one morning she saw me dressed somewhat better than normal and going out of the house. So she asked me, "Where are you going?" And I said, "I'm going to a function." So she said, "What function?" I said, "It is some important day in the National Open School. We have a National Open School." So she wanted to know, she had not been to school herself. So she wanted to know what was National Open School. When I explained to her, she said, "Oh, this is a school meant for me." She was 96 years old.
Wow.
And she said, "I did not get the opportunity to go to school when people in those days didn't. So please, can you enroll me in this school?" Because she always wanted to learn English and never got an opportunity. So I think that you're absolutely right. Those who are looking forward, those who want to learn, are those who are young. And I think Mukulji has also expanded to say that there are old institutional forms, but which can be used in a new way. And there are also the fact that any of this learning involves, 360 degrees. You require all your senses to be activated. Now I'm going to pass it on to Mr. Gavaskar. A lot of Indians in the room, but for those who may not be from India, I have to say a little bit. He is the Michael Jordan of cricket in India. So we are in the presence of a very important icon. And the fact that you are on our panel is a huge privilege to us, because I think that he will lend a perspective that perhaps you normally do not hear in the usual discussions of. So, Mr. Gavaskar, how would you add to where you want this conversation to go?
Firstly, thank you for all the kind words. Good afternoon, everybody. Couple of things, and secondly, of course, those of who know cricket know that this is not the normal batting number.
Yes.
I generally open, but of course, this is a women-centric thing. So you open the batting, and you did a fantastic job. But I think what came out of what both of you all said is basically about the mental aspect. And in the sport that I play, I think I've always believed that temperament is, is what differentiates the men from the boys. As far as you could have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have the temperament, and temperament is something that you cannot really, educate. It comes with experience. Although if you have coaches who are able to give you examples, give you situations where things have not been going well, and then how you extract yourself out of the situation, is also something that is part of learning. What happens in sport is you're all the time thinking on your feet. You could be coached in a particular way. You could be coached to do this, do that, move this way, move that way. But at the end of the day, you have to deal with the situation as it arises. And therefore, whatever you might have learned, all the technicalities that you might have learned, eventually it's your temperament that's going to take you through. And sport definitely is a youth-oriented activity. You were very kind to say that at about 65 is what you would call youth. In fact, I had a fellow commentator who's now a minister in the Punjab government whose favorite line was 60 is the youth of old age. So that's something that we can say. And you did also mention earlier on in the sports session that you had that Sania and Mithali talked about how important the opportunities they got at school took them to this level of international acclaim and fame. And I do therefore believe that sports must be part of the curriculum. Sports has got to be part of the curriculum because otherwise you're only going to have people who have a different sense of living. What sports teaches you is, apart from the hard work involved, apart from the 3Ds which are essential for doing well in sport, which is determination, dedication, discipline. What it teaches you is that there will be days when you're not going to win. And it teaches you how to accept defeat, how to learn from the defeat, and how to get better so that the next time you're better prepared. It also teaches you, most times, to win gracefully, to accept that yes, you've been the better person, but this is sport. Maybe a year down the road, somebody else is going to come, or maybe a week down the road, somebody else is going to come who's going to be better than you. But making sports part of the curriculum does give the student a better idea of how to deal with issues in sport. If you have a look at the successful players in the Indian cricket team, with some examples, of course, most of them have been to university. So what happens is that they are able to understand if they're going through a bad patch, as we call it in cricket, they're going through a bad patch, they're able to apply the mind in a much more scientific way as to why this is happening. They're not just going blindly into, trying to sort of rectify. They're thinking what is happening. Is their movement slow? Do they need to train better? Do they need to eat a little bit better? Do they need to practice a lot better? So all these aspects are the reason why I believe that an educated sports person is definitely a better sports person than anybody else. So I think that is where I genuinely believe that sports should be part of the curriculum. And marks should be given. Today, what that will do is, if you see the sports that are successful all over the world, those sports are sports which are a serious career option. And again, successful sports persons in those various disciplines of sports are those who had an education background.
This, from some of the things that you all are saying, it reminds me of a film, perhaps made almost 10 years ago, called 2 Million Minutes. It's a documentary film. And what the film does is it captures, apparently, from the time you enter 9th grade till the end of high school is 2 million minutes.
Right.
And the film, in a very interesting way, and I'm mindful of the fact that we are talking about global issues here, it tracks 2 kids each, 2 in Shanghai, 2 in Bangalore, and 2 in America, 1 boy and 1 girl. And it shows what are the kinds of challenges, what are the kinds of pressures, and what are the kinds of opportunities these young people go through in their 2 million minutes. And the documentary, I would encourage people, I'm sure it's on YouTube, to see, and they have some commentators talking about it. So while I think perhaps all of us here and most of you in the audience would agree that our education system today, or the learning opportunities that lie outside the school system, need to be very different, the reality is, at least in India and perhaps in other parts of Asia, that there are some very, very competitive and difficult hoops that you have to jump through. In India, we have our 10th exam, which I'm so glad I'm the age that I am, because I'm sure that the 10th class exams, now I would not even have be able to pass them. You have a 10th grade exam, you have a 12th grade exam, and performance in these almost restricts what you should have beyond.
Yes.
So I want us, 3 of us, and I'm sure there are similar things in other parts of the world. So I want you, all 3 of you, to talk a little bit about where we are today and where we all want to go. We may have slightly different viewpoints on what the future should be, but how do you think we move from here to there? Obviously this should be the conversation for a much longer period of time. But very briefly, if you can talk about one or two things that you think could be the levers of change that help us to get to where we want to be and past the difficulties that we see today. Mukulji, would you?
Broadly everywhere on the globe is more based on the memorizing of facts and then reproducing it in the examinations. May it be quiz, may it be written exam, or may it be practicals, evaluations and all that. But what I see while working in this field for the last so many years, there is a tremendous change world over, basically in the methodology of learning and the methodology of evaluation. More creative means are coming, like the leaders in school education, of course, is Finland. They have totally revamped the whole schooling system into a creative education system, and last couple of years they have changed the whole school, the pattern of school. There is no more rote learning, there is no more memorization and things like, everything is hands-on, experiential, working like. So when I got that news on the web, I put it on my Facebook saying that Gurukul already started in Finland. When will it start in Bharat? Like that. So that is what is changing. The whole creativity thing is coming up. Whole hands-on experience is coming up. Whole methodology of looking at schooling is changing. That is happening in this country also. Maybe in the national education policy, which is due, large overdue now. They are preparing that. And in that, this credit system may come to the schooling. Choice-based credit system may come to the schooling. And if the choice-based credit system comes to the schooling, these 2 million minutes can be used more sensibly. Somebody like Sunil Manohar Gavaskar need not study physics or chemistry. He can study more nuances and more things related to the physical education, related to sports and things like that. And somebody like maybe who is in music or who is in some different form of art, he can take his own credits. Some photographer may take his own credits and work on them along with mathematics, along with language for that matter. So rigidity in the curricula, rigidity in the methodology, rigidity in evaluation has to go, and it is going. And it is fast going all over, world over. So what I see, the future learning patterns will be more learner-centric, more individual-centric. The greatest challenge a teacher today has to address the class of say 40, 50, that is the average here in this country, 40 students for a teacher, whom do I address? Because education or learning in itself is a totally unique individual process. It cannot be done in a group. So a challenge for a teacher is to address that individuality. So this digitalization and all this open schooling and all these open platforms, that may change the whole scenario of learning, making it more the learner oriented. The onus of learning will be more on the students than on the teacher. Today the teacher are under the pressure of completing the syllabus and all that. Put that pressure on the students. Let them do it with joy. Let them have that joy of learning rather than having just that pressure of learning. Let them have that bliss of knowing. Knowledge is bliss. That is jnana and ananda. In Sanskrit, we look at them as synonyms, these two. Knowledge is bliss. So let them have that bliss of knowledge. Today we have lost that because of our rigidity in syllabus, rigidity in teaching methodologies. So I don't use the word teaching methodology at all. I say make it learning methodology. When we take orientation classes for teachers, I tell them to be a best teacher. Stop teaching. Let your class be a learning atmosphere. Create a learning atmosphere where each student starts learning on his own, his or her own. And the teacher is a guide, not just facilitator, which is a very modern and very fancy word. But it's not just facilitating. He is guiding also. He is telling you where to go. That kind of a coaching is also needed in that learning process. So what I see is the future where each individual will have a choice of knowledge he wants to master and will have the means and methodology to achieve them through modern schooling. That's what we try to achieve. And I think it may happen in 10, 15 years. In a decade, I see that the whole technology part in it and the whole, what I should say, everybody is not happy with what is happening. That kind of a discontent, I call it divine discontent in the education system will force this change.
Vivian?
Right. Now, I actually think with the work that I do, so I work for an organization called Junior Achievement. We are in 17 locations in Asia Pacific. And I'm going to share with you something that you already know. I'm going to share with you some of the painful experiences that we're going through in this region. Simply because, not because change is not happening. The question we're asking is change happening fast enough? And is change happening sort of like everywhere enough, right? So because we are predominantly a very academic-based region, so which means that we really do need the support of the parents to allow our students to pursue different passions and careers in life. There is no one way to success. You don't need to be a lawyer, a doctor, and an accountant to be successful. Because we are already seeing the very miserable results of the pressure we're applying on our young people being very evident by the quite high suicidal rate of young lives. So when we talk about retooling, actually what I was thinking is that maybe it's more than retooling. It's actually refocusing, it's recentering. We need to ask ourselves the question so that young people understand why they need to learn. And I refer, you all to maybe a TED Talk that maybe you have already seen. Simon Sinek, the golden circle. Don't go to them about the what and the how. Go to our young people about the why they need to learn, the why they want to be educated, the why they want to actually have the ability to build a better life. Because there is no longer monopoly of knowledge. We know that our education system was built for the industrial age. We are now in the fourth industrial revolution. So a lot needs to happen, and a lot needs to happen fast. So I am going to share with you something that I brought from Thailand, which really tells us that how education should really be in the future. Instead of like you learn for 10, 15 years and you think that, gee, I'm ready for the rest of my life. This doesn't happen that way. And we also want to make education and learning relevant. And we want to inspire them so that they can co-create a future with us. So we have this group of young Thai students. Gee, I wish I had their aspiration when I was their age. So they wanted to solve a big challenge. They wanted to be part of Thailand's future. So they were looking at a big problem that Thailand was facing, which was the falling rice price. Yeah? So many of you know that Thailand is famous for rice, and the rice export actually makes up a huge percentage of the economy. So we have a group of high school kids. They are really high school kids. Allow me to call them high school kids, because they're only, 16, 17-year-old. They say that I want to do something for my country, and I want to be part of the solution of this falling rice price, because a lot of farmers were having so much problems that they were committing suicide. So this group of Thai kids went to the farms, study what farmers do. And along the way, they find out that, there is a big environmental challenge that most farmers face. So when you harvest the rice, what do? You beat the rice, and you have the rice husk. So then you need to take care of the rice husk. And traditionally, what they do is they burn the rice husk. So what happens when you burn the rice husk? You have a huge environmental problem, right? So you look at the rice husk not as trash. They were looking at it as resources to say, okay, is there something that I can do about it? So they started experimenting. They actually started with 3D printer and then say, maybe they could make some sort of like a stationary set, mix it with some polymer and see what happened. So they came out with the first prototype. That didn't go too well because it didn't look too well, but that got them thinking about maybe 3D printer as we know it right now is due not at the stage that can create the best product for our kids. So they actually took the concept and then through a lot of rendering came up with a model that they went to a manufacturer and have them produce into something like this.
Fantastic.
Entrepreneurs that are there because for a reason. They want to make this a better world, and they know that learning will get them to a better world. So they are inspired to learn. They are inspired to find teachers. They are inspired to look for ways to actually create this product. And this is a product that could be sold in stores like Muji. And, you were saying that, I come up here, I put my iPhone here, right? But it didn't stop there. So with what they have learned from this product, they've gone back to the farmers. They actually teach the farmers how to make use of what is known as trash to create additional revenue income source. Now, talk about learning with a purpose. Talk about really igniting the passion in our youth to continue to learn and to motivate others. So this is what I would see as the learning for the future, is that we're not there just to provide them with tools. We are there back to the golden circle. The reason why they need to learn, the reason why they need to be educated is to solve problems. And some of those problems could be really, really big problems. So
that's a wonderful, I think, inspiring story. And I think that what that shows us is that with each new generation, you learn from what the young are doing to be able to really take it forward. Mr. Gavaskar, do you see these kinds of trends in the young people that you deal with? Do you see that successive generations are coming to the fore in different ways than, say, perhaps when you were young?
Definitely, as long as there is no parental pressure. The problem always is, parental pressure, and also therefore pressure from your teachers. I think students, like you hit the nail on the head, both of you all, by saying that the youngsters should be allowed to pick what they want to do. Sure, there are certain, areas where you cannot, divert. Right. But I think as long as you allow the youngsters to pick what they want to do, they'll be more successful at it. We can't, shove something down their throat. We can't say that I'm a doctor, so my son's got to be a doctor. I'm a pharmacist, so my son's got to be a pharmacist. I think those are the kind of things which are never going to go anywhere, because never going to take you anywhere, because then the youngster feels, stultified. He feels that, look, this is the only thing he's got to do. And therefore, the way is to maybe let him do what he wants and get and derive, in what is education? Education is preparing yourself for a life where you can, do what pleases you within the framework of the law, of course, or what pleases you, but also which, gives you that satisfaction of having done something worthwhile, and as you said, having contributed to the society. I think this is it's a wonderful example. It's a wonderful example that, and it didn't come straight away. After a couple of trial and error, and that is what I think the youngsters should be encouraged to do. They should be encouraged to learn how to learn. And how do you learn how to learn? By making mistakes. You make mistakes and then you learn to learn. And I think that I believe is the key. Make the youngsters understand learning to learn is also the way forward.
The morning panel, the plenary, I think Mrs. Blair talked about 3 C's. I think it was confidence, capability and capital. And capital, exactly.
Is it because her name starts with a C?
Could be.
She's the 4th C.
But there was another person whose name started with C who spoke of 3 E's. So Chanda Kocher spoke about 3 E's. Education, empowerment and encouragement. But listening to all of you, and my name doesn't start with a C, I feel like none of our names start with a C. I can see 3 C's that you are all kind of, in your saying, bringing out. I think Vivian has brought out this connection. If you don't feel a connection with things around you, if you don't feel that what is a problem around you needs to be solved, then the learning is not going to go that way. So that one is a connection. I think Mukulji spoke about choice. That you should be, as part of your learning menu, should be that you actually are allowed to choose. Which I would say that in our system, I did not really have to take any choices of what I learned until in school. Outside
Yes,
school, you were taking choices all the time. But in school, you really didn't have a choice except once in 9th or 10th when you took science or arts. And that choice was taken for you because if you were a good student, you went to science. And if you were, not, then you went to arts. And I think the third one, perhaps, which cuts across all of these, is curiosity. That you want to keep trying until you feel like you've made some success. And I think Vivian outlined this very beautifully to say that the first time round it wasn't great. And I think that's very much like any learning process. You learn only when you keep working at it. Now, given all of this, I had made some questions, but I think we've abandoned our questions because we should have the choice to move in the ways that we like.
That's the learning.
Yes, we're learning to unlearn.
However, there was somebody on email who was also guiding this panel. I don't know if he's here, but who said to me that in the conversation, do bring in two other words, which I'm going to do now. One is behind us, which says enterprise, and the other one is technology. Now, in this vision that here we are perfectly collaborating. We are all agreeing with our visions. The world outside is a different place, but how do we feel that technology and those who will invest in technology, those who will experiment with technology, will help us to move in the directions we want to move? I am not a technology person, but in the field of education where I work, I can see there is a lot of technology being placed in certain parts of the education landscape. Higher education, lots of MOOC, open courses, big initiatives that you see online. Those are all directed at the higher education level. I see in India at least a lot of sprouting. Whether now when you start something new, it's called a startup. Earlier, when you started something new, it was just called a new thing. In private schools, you see lots of use of digital stuff. I work in my own field with children who go to government schools, and much of the work that we do in my organization is to really build basic skills of reading and math. And we see there's a lot of work to be done there as well. So how do we, this technology and this enterprise, which is clearly out there, many of people in the room are probably from that field, how do we harness some of that to bring it to where there may not be commercial incentive for it to play out? What would be your views on how do we align the resources with the problems? And I'm going to hand it over to Vivian because she's going to have a terrific example of how to do that.
Right.
You inspired us already with Thailand.
Okay, so I don't know whether we've got the solution already, but I think there are a couple of things that I think is really important. When it comes to technology, I've learned this from an educational master. Technology, education, let's think about low floor, high ceiling. Right. What do I mean by low floor, high ceiling? Low floor, especially we are here in Asia Pacific. We have 60% of the world's youth. I was in Indonesia a few months ago that we actually introduced smartphones for the first time to some rural children. And after the first session, when we tried to actually tell them that it's okay, don't worry, we will come back next week with the smartphone, it was like, you really need to fight with them and to get them to understand that you will go back. So I think it's actually low floor because the low floor is survival skills already. It's survival skills any government, any corporation should think about providing technology so that everybody can be at least the level playing field. But high aspiration is also where we come in. High aspiration is really, again, challenge them, challenge their creativity to look at what is available through technology. And if I can share again with you another example from Korea, okay? So I need to define South Korea, okay? All right. So I was in Seoul, in South Korea 4 weeks ago. So again, youth are looking at, how can they contribute to the future of South Korea? And they came up with a product. Now, hopefully we never need to use it. So in the case of a fire, so if a fire were to break out, alarm goes off. So you have the exit sign, like the one at the back, if you were to look at it. So would you know which way to run? Imagine it's a room filled with smoke, right? So they came up with this little device. It's not the most high tech, but it's the the creativity. They came up with two little devices that is attached to the fire exit sign that will send a green laser beam through. It's a green laser beam that will cut through so that if the fire is in that direction, please don't run in that direction. Please run the other direction. But it's the laser beam that will guide you so that you would know that I will follow the laser beam and follow that direction to safety. Now, so this is what I'm saying is that when it comes to technology, yes, we need the support of the government. We need the support of private enterprises and make sure that it's low floor so that everybody can join. But it's also a high aspiration so that they understand through technology, they can come up with a lot more creative solutions to admittedly many of the problems that we are leaving behind to them.
Great.
So do you see the same direction as Vivian sees in technology coming to the point where these problems can be solved?
Hopefully, yes. Hopefully, yes, because I think we get to situations where we don't seem to have, sometimes we are stumped for an answer. We are in a situation like the example of being in a room where there's fire, you don't know where to go. And therefore, I think if technology is going to help us, guide us to safety, guide us to a solution, I think it is absolutely necessary. In sport, for example, we have the technology that has come through in my sport, cricket, has been amazing. Amazing in the sense that for coaching, it's been a tool which is now being used regularly. For tactics, it's being used. For evaluation of a particular player's skill sets, it's being used. So technology is the future. How we use that technology is also going to be the key, because we can use it productively or we can use it in a destructive manner. And I think that is where where education again comes in. If you have an educated person who knows that technology has to be used for the greater good, then I think the world is going to be a better place.
Mukulji.
I will talk about entrepreneurship because that is left.
I'll add one question to you as well. How do you see technology? Because I think one of the fascinating things about what you're doing is reviving things that already exist but presenting them in a modern way. So both enterprise and technology, in your vision of where we are headed with education, give us a brief view.
Technology is always going to be a very, very positive tool. In case of education, there will be some hiccups. Like what you said, in schooling we have started this digital content in so many government schools also now. But that is sometimes very counterproductive because the teachers lose interest. They put the pen drive in that TV and they start that lesson, and outside the teacher is doing her WhatsApp. So, it is technology, how you use it. That is the part of technology. But technology is going to change every now and then. Every 6 months you will have new technology. This digital content cannot be static. It has to be very dynamic. 3D will come, this virtual reality will come. So that is going to be there. But these are all tools. These have to be used by men. These have to be, and of course women. When I say men, I don't, there is no gender bias. So it has to be used by teachers, and most of the teachers are women, even today. And that's good. That's why they are more sensible and more sensitive also. So they are using it. But the most important part which is coming, especially when I look at this country in education, is this entrepreneurship. Now this mindset of I should get into some enterprise, I should do something. This startup has changed the mindset, especially in the colleges. And it is now coming to the schools also, like what you gave examples from Thailand. There are many such examples from rural area in this country also who are working for problem solving of the society. They are working there. The schools are doing it. Teachers are guiding them. I have example of many mathematics teachers from Solapur in Maharashtra. He and his students invented a box, A small box which can teach you mathematics up to 10th standard. A simple box has all the tools, and that box is prepared by the teacher and the student. So they solve the problem of mathematics being a very difficult subject like that. But the most important thing is, we were looking at an education system where the purpose, as she rightly said, what is the purpose of education? It has been for last, say, 100 years to get job. And when I say get job, it is a salaried job, and better if it is a government job. So that is kind of a mindset in our society that has been there. And that was giving a glass ceiling to this country, to the innovation, to the creativity. Because a most creative who could have become a scientist, who could have become something, was looking after some government job where he can do nothing and get paid. So that kind of a mentality is changing because of this entrepreneurship. And the third thing, which is very important for those, the kind of people which are participating here, is the rise of social entrepreneurship. The social entrepreneurship will change the whole education scenario. The activism of the private sector in education with this kind of a motive, not just commercial, there is a commercial motive, and I don't denigrate that also. That is also needed. Though in education in this country, we don't treat commerce go hand in hand with education. That is right also. Education basically should be a philanthropic activity. That is how we look at it. But this private sector, this corporate sector, coming in the area of education with social entrepreneurship mindset will change the whole scene. Because that is the ideal. When society owns up its next generation, society decides how we want our next generation to be educated, not the government. Not the government. There is no need of regulation if the society is active, if the society is aware, if the society is ready. The ideal situation is where education is without any governmental intervention. It is the best when teachers decide what is best for the student and not somebody sitting in the capital and deciding the framework. It is the framework which will be decided by the on-ground people or in-field people who are really looking at the things. And that will happen only if funding comes from the society. Because funding is coming from the government, regulations are coming from the government. If fundings come from the society, then there will be change. And that's why we have started a foundation called Research for Resurgence. Because that is the crux at knowledge. Research should not start at higher education. Research should start at the nursery level, at the pre-primary level. The student should be encouraged to do research, to know by doing research. That is what we are trying to do.
So if I look at the fact that in India today, and I'm sure in other Asian countries it must be even higher, in India today, of the school-going age group, if you take the age group of 6 to 14, enrollment in school is very high. It's well above 95%.
Yes.
And that was not the case, I would say, 25 years ago. And when I look at it because I think I agree with you that over the last 25 years, everybody agreed, not just the government and not just policymakers, but most importantly parents, that this is something that my children must have. And each parent, I think, in India today sends their children to whatever they can afford best or whatever they consider to be the best. And that has led to this very high enrollment. And I think we are at a very interesting cusp where now we have quite close to universal schooling, but we need to get to a universal learning. And as we are getting to universal schooling, our definitions of learning are becoming, less linear, more open, and so on. Now, address for me the fact that 50% of the children who are in school today have mothers, and I'm stressing mothers not because fathers are not important, but because I think mothers play a very key role in the early years of children for sure. Our mothers have not been to school very much, and so they feel underconfident, going back to at least one of the C's of the morning, in actually dealing with what are the learning issues that are coming up.
Yes.
And hence perhaps the fact that Mr. Gavaskar, you talk about parental pressure is perhaps coming because you know that your aspirations are very high. Every Indian parent wants, and every Asian parent perhaps wants their children to go as far in education as possible. But the path that we have seen in front of them has been of the traditional path. That you go from one class to the other class, you do one exam, you pass that exam, and then that's where the future lies. So how do we change this mentality? How do we help parents who have not perhaps seen a different model, who perhaps are underconfident about these new things that we're talking about? How do we get them to feel confident that if you let your children choose, let them go to the rice fields? How do you imagine that a mother, my grandmother, who never went to school, who thought that everybody was wearing a uniform and heading out is the way to go, how do I change her mind to say, let the children?
Well, I think I have the opportunity to actually talk to many parent-teachers association. Basically, most of the time it's usually the government that feeds me to that forum, so that we can actually share with parents some of the messages that they really need to hear. But we need to go back to the basics, that even for parents who might not have had a very high education, the reason why they believe a secure way of success for their kids is to put them through higher education. That is because they didn't know other ways that they would be able to achieve that. I wish this panel can be coupled with another one that actually happened earlier today that talk about bridging the digital divide altogether. The digital divide, because for some of those families, for some of those parents or moms and potentially fathers, if they can understand the world of possibilities, and I'll give you a concrete example of the world of possibilities. Many parents in Asia Pacific, what they complain about the most is that their kids are disengaged from learning. They don't like to learn. And what they like to do is to go into the rooms and play video games. Is that familiar?
Yes,
is that a familiar complaint?
Yes.
So most of the parents will only look at the negative of video games. They are not looking at possibilities of video games. Now, this is a fundamental question that we need to ask ourselves. If we say that we want our children to be looking at possibilities, but we don't explore possibilities with them, where are the role models? Now, and then what we do is we actually invite the parents to think about, hey, that means that your kid can be actually very focused. Your kid can actually be very good at something. They are very good at, eye-hand coordination. They are very good at multitasking because I don't know about you, I am absolutely poor with network games. Yes. But these kids, they know how to master network games. They know how to really do it well. And I say, why don't you challenge your kid to think about, you are not just good at playing network games. And by the way, esports now is a multi-billion-dollar business. I know, I'm so sorry that this is esports, okay? But it's a multi-billion-dollar business, right? But in addition, challenge your kid to think about, not only am I good at playing network games, I can be the next mega box network game developer, right? And I say challenge them to think about, because now we already know that, doctors learn how to do a lot of surgery through games. And I say challenge them to think about the day that doctors will no longer be prescribing drugs. They will be prescribing network games to somebody who might suffer from, some, health condition. Invite them to look at the bigger possibilities of what they are good at. And through that, maybe parents will be together with us to allow our kids to pursue a future that is going to be passion aligned, and at the same time, hey, profit, planet, people all come together. Yes.
She's perfect.
Yeah. she is working. She is experiencing that.
I don't see any timekeepers here.
Yes,
but I thought maybe can we open up a few
I'll just add one thing. Parents, we need to work with them, and we are working in our organization. We have developed modules for working with parents called Awakened Parenthood and things like that. But most importantly, parents will be taken care of by the children. That is what is my experience. They teach their parents. So we taught our parents, so children will teach our generation, the next they will teach their parents. So working with children is more important than working with parents. We have to deal with parents, no doubt about that. But children will take care of parents.
Should we?
I have a question here, ma'am, right at the front.
Right.
Sure,
What we'll do is we'll take a round of 3 questions.
sure.
And then go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Gavaskar, legend of Indian cricket. I would like to ask you.
Will you please sit down because you make me feel shorter than
Sir,
No.
sir, I am a professor of management. I teach people there are 3 ways of learning: visual, auditory, kinesthetic. And when you combine these 3, you become a great student, great sportsman, or whatever you want to be. Have you seen any change over the last 20 or 15 years, a change of attitude in parents that sports can also be a very viable and formidable profession? It's very important because we are a nation of 1.3 billion and we have produced less gold medals than Michael Phelps has won in the Olympics. It's very important that we combine sports with education. So from your perspective, your experience, if you can tell us, have you seen any change? How do we develop a culture of sports? That's my question to
I
you.
think you probably came a little bit late. And I think in my opening remarks I had said that sports should be part of the curriculum. Because there are so many things that sports can teach us, apart from the discipline, dedication, determination, and winning gracefully, learning from your losses. But yes, I think when sport is a career option, a viable career option, parents don't come in the way. Look at soccer or football in all over the world. If your child is looks a prospective footballer, parents will allow him to play as much football as he can. Yes, football is the kind of game which is inexpensive. You don't need anything. You just need a round thing. You don't need a proper football also. You just need a round, a spherical object. And all you need is, just go on to the street and, play. And if you're good, you carry on. But because football, cricket in India, now tennis and badminton in India, they're becoming, viable career options if the parents find that there's a little spark in their kids of, playing that sport well. They encourage that. No longer, I think, is the child told, come on inside, enough of playing, time to learn. I think that has come down considerably. It has not come down totally, and which is understandable. Because ours is such a big country that, in sport, any sport, you will have only a handful of people who will go right up to the top, whether it's a cricket team or whether it's a tennis player or a badminton player. Just going to be a handful. So while it's understandable, therefore, for some parents to be concerned about the progress that their kids are making, there certainly is a much in the last 20 years a much more open acceptance of the fact that if they see something in their children, they will not pressurize the child to only be looking at studies.
What I'll do is, because we have a lot of hands up, be brief with your question, and then we'll take 3 together so that then panel can answer it.
We are starting this program where we are encouraging students at the school level to join entrepreneurship education and encourage entrepreneurship right at the 11th and 12th level, going up to post-grad. But again, the question comes that how do we, sensitize the parents that their children should look towards. First of all, children don't have an option of entrepreneurship to take up as a subject. So we are now creating an option. Students might get involved in this, but how do we sensitize the parents? Because entrepreneurship is again a very high risk game, and parents who are not so well, are coming from rural background, the first thing will be, should I take that risk or should my child take that risk of taking entrepreneurship as a subject? So how do we sensitize parents?
Okay. Now we need a question from a lady. Yes.
So I'm the CEO of Smart Kids Club, and we are a publisher of digital ebooks for kids. It's easy for private schools to afford such kind of benefits. But what we want as a social entrepreneur is to make a real change in rural India. We should reach places where the kids cannot afford it, the parents cannot afford it. So what is government and private partnership encourage such resources so that the parents in the rural schools and the government schools in India can afford such resources which can help the kids come up to a level that is consistent throughout the country rather than there is a divide going up private schools versus
So first question was
Directly at you.
Yeah.
Leadership, risk taking. How do you go to the top?
Well, it's there's no gene as such, because at the sports level, it's a lot of perseverance. With you have a certain skill set that is God given, but you got to persevere at developing that skill set, to honing your skills to get better, and only experience after that, the more you play, will get you to understand your own strengths and your weaknesses and how to work on your weaknesses. Sometimes, for example, it could just be a question of fitness. Like, for example, in cricket, there are a lot of bowlers who take 3 wickets, not able to get 5 wickets. Why does that happen? It possibly happens because their fingers are not strong enough to be able to bowl that many overs. Similarly, lots of people get 60 or 70 runs, not able to get to 100. Why does that happen? Because they don't have the stamina to get to 100. So how do you build it? So those are the kind of things that come with experience and with the perseverance, and also where you have guidance from somebody maybe who has played the game, somebody who's been able to see what is the situation and what is invariably the X factor, and that is your temperament. The X factor is always the temperament. If your temperament is solid, where you don't give up, then you are going to get those 30 runs to get to 100, maybe more than that. And you're going to maybe take a little bit of a breather and not try and take a wicket every ball, so that your fingers, your skin doesn't, the skin doesn't come off, and then you're able to bowl more. So while parents will have a look at their child and say, look, yes, I think he's got it. The key then would be to make sure that he gets good guidance, and then eventually leave him to learn from his own mistakes. All of us who have gone on to play for India, we've made huge mistakes. We've made mistakes. We've gone through bad patches where for a whole season you've done nothing. Everything's just been down on you. That is where then parents come into play. Parents come into play to tell you, look, this is it. This is part of the game. They might not have ever played the game. But if they can encourage you at that stage, look, this can happen to everybody. Give you examples of maybe former players, former greats who have had a bad patch, who had a lean season, then you can go ahead.
Enterprise, young children, parents.
Basically, that risk-taking factor, that cannot be done away with in any kind of entrepreneurship. And parents definitely would want their children to settle down. That is the word we use. And I am really surprised at that word. And when I throw it back to the parents, they are also surprised. Do you want to precipitate your child? Why settle down? Let him do some experiments. So that needs a lot of working. But one thing which the government can do is create a safety net. Like what we are doing with this Mudra and startup, combining these 2-3 things together. If a safety net can be created where the startups or the entrepreneurs, the young entrepreneurs are given somewhere, if they fall back, this is where you stop. You will not go down. So that kind of a safety net can then give parents a little confidence to get into it. That I think should be done by the government.
Vivian,
maybe with the help of insurance companies.
Answer to his question.
Yep.
How are other countries in Asia Pacific dealing, in a way, this starting the seeds in school is a safe place, where the stakes are not so high, the parents don't need to be too worried. And perhaps when you look across the countries that you deal with, how do you see this seeding of entrepreneurial skills in school being handled in different countries?
Yeah, I think I'll try to handle the second and the last question together, because I think number one, there is a difference between entrepreneurship and entrepreneurial skills, okay? Entrepreneurship might or might not be for everybody. Not everybody is cut out to be an entrepreneur, but everybody can develop entrepreneurial skills, and those skills will help you a long way in life. Now, the way how we work it is that we invite our children, we would invite our youth, some as young as in primary school, to get a taste of what it's like to be starting something, right? Get a taste of creating something from zero, from nothing. And the way how we can energize our parents to come together with us is we really need to bring our parents to understand whatever jobs that their children will be aiming for might no longer be there by the time they graduate, right? So why not start developing that entrepreneurial skills in them so that they can continually be creating successes in their lives? May that be through creating a company or creating new innovations in an organization. Now, in terms of working together with the government and private sectors, definitely the work that we are doing is we want to focus our resources on those who have little access, not those ones who have a lot of access. Because I think we owe it to ourselves in this region to bring prosperity for all.
Yes.
Prosperity for all for the whole region. And we need to start not just with private school. We need to start with our government school. And we should challenge them to really look at, hey, so India is doing this. What is, Taiwan doing? What is Korea doing? What is Japan doing? So that everybody to be coming together to build a very inclusive, prosperity movement together. And I'll just finish off. We talk about STEM. South Korea, again, I say, they have made it mandatory. Coding will become mandatory curricula starting next year in primary school.
Yes.
Shall we take one more round of questions? Be brief so that we can fit in like we did last time. Go ahead.
Because we run experiential learning and an education company. And I think one of the things, I think parents get the point, I think kids get the point. I think the biggest challenge and the concern for us has been, he was talking about, like how do you address schools and how do you address the administration to say that, this is equally important and he can make a career out of it. Earlier, a carpenter's son became a carpenter because he learned specific skills. He probably didn't know the math around it, but he knew those skills. So how do you drive that down to a school or to a local administration saying, let's not learn these 6 subjects, so how do you take it down? That's been a big challenge for us. Because when we take our program, they say, we have exams next week, so we can't do this program.
So your question is, how do you get schools and governments to loosen up? Right?
The lady.
Okay, go ahead. She's representing 2 countries, not just one, by the way.
My name is Jenny. I'm from Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. In Kyrgyzstan, I'm the chairman of Association of Social Entrepreneurs. So we have school social entrepreneurs, provide young people, realize their projects, and then give them seed funding. And in Kazakhstan, I'm actually leading the largest education company. In Kazakhstan, we together work with the Ministry of Education. We provide this kind of nationwide testing when the school students that graduated from the school, entering their university, online education, and so on. So I have a new position. I'm the head of the corporate planning and developments. Being honest, choosing this session come to the education sector is very difficult. In the past 7 years, I work in education as a volunteer base. I work in the very profit investment consulting sector. And it was just recently I realized I really want to choose the missions, choose the one really close to my heart, and I select this education because I believe this is an investment in human capitals. This is a very long-term and sustainable. So thank you everybody here. I believe we also hold this kind of very strong missions. So my question is this. We had a very debate with our board members of the company because on the one hand, I recently read the Harvard Business School professor said by 2020, there will be half of the American college university will get bankrupt because of the increasing online educations, right? So in America, it's around 4,000 something college and university overall. And on the other hand, actually in our firm, we wanted to do some kind of more fundraising through the social entrepreneurship investment. We want to build more schools because we don't have enough schools facilities. So this is kind of we want to put the priority. Should we focus on this kind of building the school infrastructure, or should we, since it is a global trend anyway, the school will get bankrupt. I mean, so we need to focus on the online educations because we need to pick the priority. Yes, thank you.
So shall I treat this as 3 questions? One of his and 2 of hers. His question was, how do you get schools to loosen up? You already drew the picture, but how in the existing school system, when new ideas come, how do we get them? 1 minute. And hers are, I would say, how do you attract talent which could have gone into investment banking to come and work in a productive way in the education sector? Whether it's your country or ours, I think it's a similar thing. People would like to work for McKinsey than for the Bombay Municipal Corporation schools. I think that goes without saying. Nobody's even laughing in this room because it's a reality. The second question is that in some parts of the world, you're saying that the actual physical infrastructure is going to shut down, but other parts of the world, that is needed. So how do you balance this? Open to all of you?
Yes. The first thing, the schools have to loosen up that. Everybody agrees. But how to do that? We have to, it's not just up to the management level. The whole thing is, it's more cultural. The whole society, especially in this country, most of the parts, except say Gujarat or Rajasthan, in the most societies, entrepreneurship or even a sportsman is not looked upon as a viable career, not only from the monetary or financial point of view. It is more of the social respect. A chai wala, which is very famous now in this country, a tea shop owner may earn more than an MBA graduate. I always give this example. An MBA vegetable vendor in Reliance Fresh, with all his tie and all that, he is earning 13,000 rupees per month. And much more is earned by that vegetable vendor which comes to my house. But money is more there. But social respect, if I have to marry my sister, I will prefer that vegetable vendor in Reliance Fresh, who is an MBA, rather than this vegetable vendor, who is earning 3 times more than that vegetable vendor. So it is a cultural gap that also we need to think about. The social respect aspect towards all these other avenues of career, rather than just a job, a salaried job, and that to a government job. In the social strata, that is the most respected. The government servant is most respected in all these, at least in our country. So that is the main reason why parents and even the schools are not looking at other options. That's why it's a more of a cultural drive that we have to take up, and we have to work with, and schools have to take the lead, teachers have to take the lead by example. And if that happens, then this happened, IIT Bombay, it happened. The teachers became entrepreneurs, so the students also followed. So that has to happen like that, becoming role models like that.
The problem, at least in India, is a lot of schools, I'm talking with sports in mind, a lot of schools don't even have playgrounds.
Yes.
So I think that's a key issue. Wherever you have a sports ground, you will find kids always going and playing. So maybe your sports hour, that recess that you have, along with the recess, you have a sports hour instead of a lecture for whatever subject it is there. So along with the lunch, it's an extended period. So the sports period is maybe a couple of hours total together for sport. And because for the future, the power of ideas, the power of imagination is such an important aspect. You should actually have 1 hour where in the classroom you say power of ideas. Guys, you have ideas.
0 hour.
You come and tell us your ideas.
Yes.
You come and tell us your, what you imagine. So let's have this, because from there maybe we might be able to develop something. So it's not where you say class 5A only. You just have, say, a room like this, and that is a room where you have you have this power of ideas, and that again is something maybe before your lunchtime or before the end of the day. Ideally, it should be at the start when your minds are, your body is fresh and your minds are, fresher as well. So that would be one way of making sure that the curiosity aspect, which is also so necessary for development, along with the power of ideas and the power of imagination, you give vent to that. You give them the opportunity to express itself. So that would be it. And as far as your concern I think you need to have schools, because there's that basic thing that you need to do. It's only when a child has grown up and is in a much better position to sort of think about his or her own future, as far as entrepreneurship is concerned, will they look at that aspect. But that basic part of the education has to be there. In India, for example, I think what happens in colleges, as soon as your school results are out, in colleges, every college, all the top colleges have this minimum requirement that you've got to get cut off 99%, then only you get it. Hello? I think 99% people get about 60%.
Yes.
So where do they go? Don't they get the opportunity to go to the best colleges? So maybe there is something that you need to look at as well.
Well, I actually think that I am both very optimistic and I'm extremely impatient. Extremely impatient. But I do believe that one of the industries that desperately needs to be disrupted, which has not been disrupted yet, is education. So maybe the next GES, we will actually see many plenary sessions focused on the education industry. The other thing that I would actually say, let's really think about reimagining education. All this, how do we select our best 1%? The reason why we needed all these exams is because of the way how we want to have efficiency based on an industrial scale. But if we have technology that will actually enable us to really look at the individual as an individual, maybe that will give rise to true self-directed learning. This will give rise to true diversity. So let's not be restricted with the way how we are looking at education as it stands right now, because we owe it to ourselves to reimagine education so that the young people that are getting into schools right now, or if they will still be called schools in the future, will be able to create the future as they go along.
Yes.
We've got a sign from the organizers 10 minutes ago to say 5 minutes were left. So we have to wrap up. What I'd like each of our panelists to do is to just give one headline for everyone to leave this room with, which may include retooling, learning, schooling, enterprise, all the things, or something else. Give them something to take away.
There is no need to play victimhood that this education has got only one session and that too in a small room or things like that. Education is at the base of everything. So, learning in future is going to be very, very joyful, very optimistic. Like she said, we should all be very optimistic. It is changing and changing very fast. All we have to do is to gear up, to have that change, accept that, and go ahead with that change.
Reimagine learning. Our future can only be as good as our education. So allow our youth to flourish.
Good. Yes, and I think leave the youngsters, the students to learn what they want to learn. Don't put any pressure on them that they must learn A, B, C, D only.
So when I came in this morning, I didn't know how much retooling or schooling or learning I would have, but I would thank all of you, especially my panelists, for a very, very interesting session. I've learned a lot. I hope you have as well. And the conversation doesn't need to stop. Formally, we stop here, but everybody is going to be here. So thank you very much.